Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Erin and for today's video I'm going to be doing my March wrap up. In the month of March I read 21 books, so I'm basically going to be doing 21 mini reviews for all of those books, which is basically what a wrap up is, but I'm going to try and make it a little bit quicker just so we're not here forever, because I don't want to be here forever and I don't think you do either. So I'm gonna make this go as quickly as I possibly can and I hope that works. Alright, so the first book that I finished in the month of March was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is a story about Lily and Ryle who have a whirlwind romance, and that kind of put me off at first because it was really insta-lovey and I was really confused. I thought that it was just going to be like a whirlwind romance and I don't know, stupid problems or something like that, and that really bothered me at first because I do not like insta-love. But what it turned out to be was so much more and so much more amazing. Interspersed throughout the chapters of Lily and Ryle's love story, we are getting a different love story of Lily's, which is her first love, and it's this boy named Atlas, and you don't understand how that's relevant for a good amount of time in the story, like until like halfway through, I would say. And so that was another thing that was kind of off-putting for me. It just felt really jarring and random, like I was reading two disjointed stories. But once everything came together, it was so incredible. This was a really hard book to read. Content warnings for domestic abuse, sexual assault, rape, and probably so much more. I read this at the very beginning of the month, so my memory is not completely fresh on that, so I would look them up before going into this if those are things that you're sensitive to. But I really liked the way that this was done. It was frustrating to read at points, but I think that it was a rather realistic portrayal of that. I can't necessarily say that because I've never been a victim to any of those things, thankfully. But I think that it was fairly accurate. This, from what I gather, is kind of, it's like autobiographical of Colleen Hoover's life, a little bit. Like she drew on personal experience for like the assault and all of that stuff. So from what I can discern, it's a little, those are like personal experiences, so I would guess that this is accurate for her situation. But yeah, I really liked this book. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said, not a full 5 stars because the beginning was a little bit rough for me. I still enjoyed those parts, but I didn't love the insta-love and I didn't like how disjointed the story felt, but I genuinely don't know how those problems could have been fixed. So I gave this a 4 stars. Next, I listened to the audiobook for Marriage on Madison Avenue. This is the 3rd and final installation, I believe at least, in the Central Park Pact by Laura Lane or Lauren Lane. I can't remember. I think we're following Audrey because the first one was Naomi, the second one was Claire, so I think we're following Audrey. And I really loved this book. Telling you the love interest and the tropes would definitely give the story away, but I loved it nonetheless. It was a little bit predictable, but it's like a rom-com book and it just made me feel good. It was really happy and sweet, and so I really liked it. Something that was mildly annoying was there were some communication issues, but honestly nothing out of like, I guess there was a little bit of assumption and that was frustrating, but it's not out of the ordinary, I guess. Not too far off from being realistic, although it is annoying. I went ahead and gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I think I can safely say that this is one of my favorite rom-com series of all time. The next book that I read was A Danger to Herself and Others by Alyssa Sheehan-Mel. This is the story of a girl named Hannah. This is a story of a girl named Hannah who is in a psych ward, mental institution, because something happened with her roommate and people think that she is a danger to herself and others, hence the title. What was kind of frustrating was the title was used redundantly and I was really over it at the end of the day because Like, I think it's cool when the title is, like, it's clear why it's used, but I kind of like it to be inadvertent, not necessarily spelled out for you. Sometimes it being spelled out is fine, but I would kind of like it to be like, oh, that makes sense once you read the book, but it wasn't necessarily in the book. I don't know. So that was a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. It was really heartbreaking to read because, like I said, this is an unreliable narrator, and once you find out what actually happened with her and her roommate, and then eventually the roommate that she has in the mental hospital, it's really heartbreaking because, I don't know, it's just really sad. I can't really say much more, otherwise I would give it away, but I didn't necessarily like this book, so I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. That's not to say it's bad by any means, I just didn't love it. It wasn't my favorite. I was bored. I didn't really want to read it all that often, so thank goodness the audiobook was short, but yeah, I don't know. I feel bad, but not my favorite. That being said, I will pick up more from this author because she has a book called What Kind of Girl, and that sounds really, really interesting. I just don't think that this book in particular was the one for me. Then I listened to All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover on audiobook. This was another super short audiobook that I absolutely adored. This was also really, really heartbreaking. This is about a girl, I don't remember what her name is, but I know the guy's name is Graham. I feel like her name was Lauren. Maybe I'm just putting that together because Lauren Graham, I don't know. But it's about this couple that is cheated on by both of their partners. So their partners cheated on them with each other, and they find out the same day at the same time pretty much, and they decide to leave them together after they catch them, and they form an unlikely friendship, and after a couple of like rebound dates to get everything out of their system, they come back to each other and start dating on their own, or dating each other, and it's cute romance, but you are flipping back and forth to when they met to when they are married and everything that happens there, and it's really, really sad. Content warning for infertility, if that is something that you are sensitive to. You are seeing the breakdown of this marriage and if it will potentially fall apart, which it seems very likely it will. And content warning for depression. This woman is so, so sad, and it's just like heartbreaking to read from, but this was a really great book in my opinion. I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Mortal Instruments series, which is part of the Shadowhunter Chronicles that Cassandra Clare has written. Like I said, this is the sequel, but in the first book we are following Clary, who just found out that she is part of this like race of demon hunters called Shadowhunters, and throughout this world there are also werewolves and vampires and fae and sea nymphs, I think. There's like every mythical being. It's quite honestly amazing. But she meets this boy named Jace who is a shadow hunter, and then she, like 24 hours later, her mom goes missing, and she has to join up with the shadow hunters that she didn't know existed but she's actually part of, to kind of find her mom and help her. This book I think I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. I started this a couple years ago and never ended up finishing it, but I restarted it and it was honestly amazing. I really, really loved it. I have fallen in love with this series, and so I'm really grateful that I read it. But yeah, 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is the second book in the series. Next, I read The Song of Achilles by Madison Miller. I started this one back in October, but I still remembered everything that happened, and I freaking loved this book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Yes, it took me a while to finish, but this was absolutely amazing. This is a retelling of Achilles, and it is the love story between him and a boy named Patroclus, and you see them grow up together, and then eventually Achilles is sent off to war. And I think everybody kind of knows the ending. This was so heartbreaking. There were so many cute moments in this book, and I just absolutely loved it. My heart was breaking by the end. I think I teared up, which is how you know that like this is one of my favorite books, because I don't often like cry in books. I say that now, but a lot of books made me cry this month. But yeah, I loved this. It was amazing. It was so good. 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read a graphic novel called Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker and Wendy Zhu. This is following two characters, Nova, who is a witch, and a non-binary character named Tam. I said non-binary, weird. Non-binary character. Named Tam, who is a werewolf, and Tam has not been in this town for a while, and they come back because they're in like some kind of trouble, and since Nova is a witch, they think that Nova can help them, and so Nova agrees, and there's also romance involved. I would say that this book is pretty diverse. It's really cool to see. There's also a ton of like different creatures in it, so there are witches, there are werewolves, there are ghosts, demon spirits, there's like a cult in here. It's a really brief mention, so it's not like scary or anything, but yeah, I really loved this. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was just super sweet. Then I read Galatea by Madison Miller. This is a short story that I don't think very many people know exist, but I found it on Scribd because I was looking to see if Circe was on Scribd. And this is the story of, I think it's Pygmalion. Is he the one that carved the woman out of stone and then married her because she came to life? So this is the story of the statue that came to life. She's in a hospital, and basically Pygmalion comes every day to rape her. So content warning for that. And it's just, I don't really want to say much because it's a short story. It's like 20 pages, and other than everything I've said, it's a spoiler, so you just kind of have to go into it. This was really heartbreaking. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. For what it is absolutely amazing, and I think it accomplished a lot in just like the 20 or so pages that it is. I really loved this, and Madison Miller is so good with Greek mythology and writing in any format. I think that is really impressive, being able to write full-length novels but also have equally as great an impact with like 20 or 30 pages. That is just super impressive to me. So I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. We're in the Cassandra Clare section of this wrap up, so buckle in. I read City of Glass and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. This was super jam-packed with action, and it was an amazing conclusion. If you didn't know, the Mortal Instruments was meant to be a trilogy initially, and so City of Glass was meant to be the conclusion, and I think that it was an amazing conclusion. I am obviously going to, you'll see in a second, I continued on with 4, 5, and 6 in this series, which is like the second trilogy of this series, but I really loved this. Gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. So much was happening all the time, and I loved that. There wasn't really a slow part of it, and I think that that was really impressive because it didn't feel like it was trying to do too much or like being too crazy. It just felt like everything was happening to these characters, and for as much as this is a fantasy world, it felt realistic. The next book that I read by Cassandra Clare was Clockwork Angel. I am reading these all in publication order. I freaking loved this. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I cried during an action scene purely because I just loved the characters and I was so overwhelmed by it. I love Tessa and I love Will and I love Jem. Jem is so sweet and kind-hearted and understanding, and I love how relaxed he is and how he calms everyone down. I love Will and how sassy and witty he is. It's amazing. And Tessa, willing to do anything for anyone just to help them, is amazing. I did think it was a little bit predictable, but I still loved it. So 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read City of Fallen Angels by Cassandra Clare. I ended up giving this one a 3.75 out of 5 stars. This is the 4th book in the Mortal Instruments series. This one I feel like just felt like a bridge between the 3rd book and what will be the 5th book. I haven't read the 5th book yet, but it just felt like it was trying to get you there, and it was a little bit like unnecessary, which is I think a pretty common opinion of this. So didn't love this one, but I didn't mind it, and I love these characters, so it didn't really bother me because I got to hang out with them more, and so I appreciated that. Then I read a decent amount of manga this month, starting with Waiting for Spring Volume 7 by Anna Shin. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, I think. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't really enjoy it because one of my least favorite characters was really prominent in it, and it was just really annoying to read from, but that doesn't deter my love of this series because there were just more scenes of that one character in here, and as we'll see in the next volume, since one of my favorite characters was more prominent in it, I loved that one. So just this particular volume I didn't love. This is a shoujo manga about Mitsuki, who doesn't really have that many friends, but one day at work, the 4 most popular boys in her grade that are also on the basketball team come in and they form an unlikely friendship. So there's a lot of basketball in this, but it's also just a really sweet, slow burn romance, and I really loved it. The next book that I read was Confess by Colleen Hoover. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. This is about, I don't remember what her name is, but the guy's name is Owen. And the book starts where the main character, female main character, is saying goodbye to her boyfriend who is in the hospital and he's dying, and she has to go home to Portland. And then we pick up with her in Texas. We don't know why she's there. She's in a lawyer's office, and on the way home from the lawyer's office, she's realizing that she needs more money in order to pay for the lawyer. And she comes across this sign on this door that says help wanted, knock and you're hired, basically. And so she's like debating on knocking, and then there's a hand that fixes the sign and it says help desperately needed, please come in. And so she decides to knock, and she's like, what do you need help with? And he was like, I'll pay you $200 for 2 hours of work. I really need you to come help me. And she's like, okay, but what am I agreeing to? He's like, it's not even hard. Just come with me. And so her and Owen form this friendship, and it eventually becomes a romance. He is an artist. He owns this gallery, and he like has art shows once a month. And it's just kind of their love story. I feel like if I say anything else, it's like major spoilers because I went into this book knowing nothing. But what's really cool about his art is that he uses people's anonymous confessions to title his artwork. And he draws inspiration for them in that, and it's really amazing. The very first chapter, not even the first chapter, but the prologue of this book made me cry, and the last chapter of this book made me cry, and I think that that is really impressive and attests to Colleen Hoover's talent at writing, because it takes a lot to make someone cry in a book. It doesn't matter who it is, in my opinion. But especially like the first chapter, having formed those deep connections right away and making you feel for the character's pain, I just think that that is really impressive. And so I absolutely loved this book. 4 out of 5 stars. Not my favorite. What I didn't like about this book was how Owen was like so possessive in a sense, almost. Like not crazy, but a decent. And then another thing that I didn't like was he kept saying, I deserve you. I'm not a big fan of people like thinking they deserve something. I'm not a huge fan of that entitlement. It just bothers me, and that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars instead of a 5, because that really irked me and I wanted to hit him every time I heard it. Like, just shut up. Then I listened to another short story on audiobook, and that is The Girl on the Plane by Catherine Center. Again, this was like a half an hour long audiobook, and I loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5, or no, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Again, I think it's really impressive what this author did as well, for it being a short story and her not having much time, but me still developing attachments to the characters and wanting to know more. This follows a firefighter on her just a day on the job. Other than that, I won't really tell you because it's spoilers, but I really liked this book. The next book I don't have a rating for, and that is This Is Where It Ends by Marieke Nijkamp, is I think how you say that name. I apologize if it's not. This is about a school shooting, and this was really hard to rate, and I can't say that I enjoyed it, or even my reading experience with it, but given the subject material, I don't think I would be comfortable saying that anyway. But I also didn't love the execution either, and I found some things kind of predictable, so I'm not rating this one because, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Then I read Waiting for Spring, Volume 8. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. This is the continuation. One of my favorite characters was in here, and it was just so sweet and wholesome and cute, and I loved it. Then I had a 24-hour readathon that I hosted. Again, massive thank you to everyone that participated. That was so surreal to me, honestly. I appreciate it so, so much. I love you all. Thank you. But yeah, my first book for that readathon was Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. I didn't love this. This is definitely not one of my favorite Colleen Hoover books. I went ahead and gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Or no, I just gave it a 3. This is following Sydney, whose boyfriend, she finds out, is cheating on her with her best friend, who is also her roommate, and so she moves in with this guy named Ridge, who is a songwriter, and they form a romance even though Ridge has a girlfriend, and they start writing songs together, and that's what ultimately leads to them having a romantic encounter. Nothing else really happens. Ridge cheats on his girlfriend with Sydney. Sydney feels bad about it because she doesn't want to be the other girl because she knows how it feels to be cheated on, and it just, I didn't really like it. The fact that they were cheating was really unsettling, and I don't like the super nice guy who's like perfect in books. I don't know why, but I don't know. It was just kind of frustrating, especially because he wasn't really nice. He was like emotionally cheating on his girlfriend. And I don't really like super sappy expressions of love. And ugh, it just like kind of grosses me out. I sound horrible. I didn't really like it, so I gave it a 3 stars. I liked the ending kind of as much as I can without them, like, without disregarding the fact that they cheated. That was like a really big point of contingency for me. So next I read Waiting for Spring Volume 9. I was just gonna call this Volume 9. I read Waiting for Spring Volume 9. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really, really liked the ending. Otherwise, it probably would have been lower, again, because there was a character in here that I do not like that was really, really prominent. But 4 out of 5 stars. I'm obsessed with this series, and I cannot wait to catch up really, really soon. Then I listened to the audiobook for The Problem with Forever by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I went ahead and gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. We are following Mallory and Ryder, who used to be foster siblings in this house that was really, really bad, and didn't take care of them. They were not in a safe environment, and because of the environment that they were in, Mallory doesn't really talk. Luckily, she has been adopted by these 2 doctors. She has been homeschooled for a decent amount of time, but for her senior year of high school, she decides to go to public school, and she sees Ryder there again for the first time in many, many years, and it kind of brings up old memories. She also has trouble speaking, and so he kind of tries to help her with all of that. I hated the audiobook for this. Otherwise it probably would have been a 5 out of 5 stars for me, so I wouldn't recommend the audiobook. I don't think it was good, but I did really enjoy this book. It does deal with a lot of really heavy topics, so I would go ahead and look up the content warnings for that if you think that you might be sensitive to anything. There was gun violence in here, there was abuse, substance abuse, and I don't remember what else, but like I said, look up the content warnings just to make sure that you are keeping safe with your mental health. Then the next book that I read was Hopeless by Colleen Hoover. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. This is about a girl named Sky Davis who is adopted by her adoptive mother when she is 5 because her dad gave her up when she was 3 after her mom dies, and she meets this boy named Holder. Yeah, and from the very first moment that they meet, he's acting a little bit strange, but she is completely like infatuated with him a little bit, and completely a little bit. Nice, that makes sense. And it's just kind of their romance. There are a lot of plot twists in here, and it just kind of seems like Colleen Hoover tried to do too much with this. So this is definitely one of my least favorites of hers. It's honestly probably a 2.5. Also, there was some slut shaming, and I didn't like the way that Holder, I just didn't like Holder really. So yeah, also there was a decent amount that was predictable in this book, and if you're gonna have like a bunch of major plot twists, I would rather not see them coming. So yeah, that was frustrating, but still a really quick read. And honestly, it's not a good book, but I would recommend it purely so we can talk about it and talk about all of the crazy plot twists. If you don't want to subject yourself to that, totally get it, but it's an entertaining read for sure. Stuff is constantly happening. The last book that I read in the month of March, and the last book that I'm going to be talking about in this video, is Break Your Own Glass Slippers by Amanda Lovelace. This is a collection of poetry. It is a spin-off series of her other series of collections of poems. I don't know what this one is called, and I kind of forget the other one because they all have really long names. But this one was amazing, and it was kind of Cinderella inspired. I loved the illustrations in this one. It didn't make me cry and wasn't totally impactful, but, or like not the most impactful, I should say, of the ones that I've read of any poetry or of hers. So I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, but I still really enjoyed it, and I really like her poetry. So that is everything that I read in the month of March. I have never read that much in a month before, so that was really crazy, but I had so much fun reading. I was just reading when I wanted to, and it was really relaxed and enjoyable. I hope you all had an amazing reading month. I hope that you're staying healthy, and I hope that you're all doing well reading mentally and otherwise as well. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.